What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about a pretty good topic that I think everyone wants some insight on. So today we are going to discuss which generation STI or WRX for your preference is actually the best. Is there an answer? We're gonna find out in today's episode, but before we even get into that answer, because we're gonna answer that later on in the video, we're going to discuss the generational differences between all of the chassis. We're going to explain all the good stuff, and I am hyped for it. Also, I got in the new oil for the oil analysis. This was the most requested oil that I saw come up. This is the Motul 8100X Clean. So I will be swapping this into the car over the weekend, as well as installing a Perrin oil cooler. So we get an install video, we get to put the new oil in. It's gonna be a real good time. So with that, we're just gonna jump right into it, and let's start talking about what STI is the best generation. You know, we're just gonna call it Impreza. I can't even call it Impreza because that's not an Impreza anymore. Let's just jump into it. So before we even get into what generation is the best, first I want to go over the chassis code. So if I've talked with any of you guys in the comments, you know I refer to these cars and their model years by chassis code. So first things first, chassis code that we're not really going to talk about because the United States didn't really get the good ones is the GC. So with GCs, you got GF8s, GC8s, you've got all these different ones, all these different chassis codes that represent different things. You've got the sedan, you've got the coupe, you've got the wagon. We're not going to jump into that one too much, but the GC series is 1992 to 2000. Now the ones we are going to jump into are the good one, the meat and the potatoes. The meat and the potatoes of all the good stuff. So for the first generation, or you know what, we're just going to go over all the chassis codes. So aside from that, the next chassis codes we're going to jump into are going to be GD, GR, and VA. So the GD series is 2002 to 2007. This is going to be your bug eyes, your blob eyes, and your hawk eyes. Personally, my favorite generations, but we'll get into that in a little bit. After that, you've got the GR series. So the GRs are going to be 2008 up to 2014. And then finally, after that, you've got the VA models like mine, which is the 2015 and plus. Now, I generally always refer to these cars by their chassis codes rather than bug eye, blob eye, hawk eye, unless I'm specifically referring to a single one. But it's just something to keep in mind. If you didn't know it, there's a little tidbit of information for you. Now, the first one we're actually going to jump into is going to be the GD models, the 2002 to 2007s, like I was saying. These are going to be your bug eyes, your blob eyes, and your hawk eyes. So we're going to cover it first. The bug eye is going to end up being 2001 to 2002. These are WRXs only in the United States. We did not get the STI variant of the bug eye. Now you can start to import them in Canada. I know that's one place you can do it, as well as other places around the world. But in the United States, we are getting the big old shaft, and we can't get them quite yet. We gotta wait till they're 25 years old. Aside from that, next you're gonna have your blob eyes. These are gonna be your 04s and your 05s, both WRX and STI. And then finally you have your hawk eyes, which are your 06 and 07 in the United States. I know those model years can vary from country to country. Now for the GD chassis, we're just gonna go over all of it. So the main differences between the GD chassis and the GR and the VA is the WRXs, the 02 to 05s only came with catted up pipes. Now, I don't know why Subaru thought this was a good idea to say, hey, let's take this catalytic converter, we're gonna put it before the up pipe, and if it dies and it shoots shrapnel up through the turbo, then God be on its way and bless your turbo, whatever, it's gonna die. So something that I see quite often is people with these 02 to 05 WRXs generally tend to swap out that up pipe as a maintenance item just so they don't end up having all that catted material go up and destroy their turbos. So next we're going to talk about the 04 and 05 models. Now, the 04 and 05 STI came with the DCCD, which is the driver controlled center diff. It's that little switch right in between your seats, the center console. If you got heated seats, can be over there, but they didn't put heated seats in the STI models, so I don't know why I told you that. Anyway, so in 04 and 05, the powertrain split on power was 35% up to the front, 65% down there to the rear, but in 2006 they ended up swapping that over to 41% up to the front and 59% down to the rear. So that is something to keep in mind if you are looking for a specific style, type, or whatever. Just keep all of these in mind. The 04, 05s are going to end up having a different split powertrain wise than the 06s and plus will. But another good just powertrain kind of thing to keep in mind here, I guess that one was drivetrain, but powertrain wise, This is a good one. In 2007, Subaru did swap over from side feed injection for the injectors. They're not going in sideways anymore, up to top feed on the TGVs. So, I mean, some people who ever want to shoot for higher horsepower applications tend to go from side feed up to top feed. They do a conversion. It's really not that bad to do. I wouldn't let it stop you if you are looking for a blob eye or a bug eye, anything like that, and you do want those higher horsepower numbers later on. Now, when it comes to bolt patterns, this one is a make it or break it for me. Well, first of all WRXs up until 2015 were 5x100, but the STIs, there was one model year that was also 5x100. Ooh, it was the 04 STI, and then in 2005, Subaru was like, nope, let's get away with that shitty bolt pattern. Okay, you know, I'm not gonna call it shitty. It's an okay bolt pattern. You just have more wheel options with 5x114. But anyways, if it were me looking for a blob eye specifically, which is one of my favorite generations, I would strictly only look for an 05 just because I do prefer the 5x100 or 5x114 bolt pattern over the 5x100. Like I said, you just have more wheel options with 5x114 unless you're going to make yourself some custom wheels. Now, in the suspension category, since we are talking about this, in 2006, Subaru did start putting the aluminum suspension components on the STIs. The front lower control arms were one of the big components that a lot of people were all jive turkey about. And then lastly, the little tidbit part we're gonna talk about for the turbos. So all of the WRXs, 02 to 07, came with a single TD04. It was a Mitsubishi produced turbo. It was okay. The STIs, the 04 to 06, ended up with a VF39, and then in 2007 they swapped that turbo over in the STIs to a VF43. Not to say that any of these turbos are bad, but they do have minor revision changes going throughout the years. Now that's not to say it's a bad thing. The VF39 is still a great turbo, but the VF43 is slightly more efficient, as Subaru did make the change to that for the later model STIs, but they did end up revising that again once they swapped over to the GR chassis. Now, like I said, with the GD models, they are personally my favorite generation of these cars, strictly because I feel like you get a more raw feeling out of the car. There's less crap going on, and it's just, you know, it's not all that bad. Plus, they came with the cool little intercooler spray button, which was my favorite. I remember sitting there, you start, and there's this really neat JD mod you can do where you can get it so it sticks in, so when you're at the track it'll consistently just keep spraying on your intercooler. It's nice. But anyways, that's going to wrap up the GD section. Let's jump into the GRs. These are going to be your 2008s up to 2014s. I'd say they're a pretty common one out on the road, so let's just jump into it. So now we're ready to talk about the next generation, which is the GR chassis. So the GR chassis was actually my first STI that I had. It was a 2008 STI. Not the best year, but you know, it got the job done. Got the job done. Now it's interesting, when they swapped over to the GR chassis in 2008, Subaru made the STI so it was only a hatchback. No more sedans. But now we all miss the hatchback. Give it back. Give back the hatch. Hashtag bring back the hatch. Anyways, so with that, the WRXs were both a sedan and a hatch, but here's the thing, they made them a narrow body. Why would you do that? So the STIs came with some pretty aggressive front and rear fender flares, while the WRXs were like smooth looking eggs. It's an interesting one. I've seen some pretty good narrow body WRXs out there, but I prefer the obviously the wider style. Ooh! But in 2011, which is still the GR, remember the GR is 2008 up to 2014, it got a facelift in 2011, so it ended up having essentially just a new front bumper. But the STI was no longer just a hatch. In 2011, Subaru did release a sedan variant of the GR STI, and people loved it. It's a good looking car, and they still retained the hatch, which was nice. So you had a hatchback STI from 2008 to 2014, and then from 11 to 14, you had an STI sedan option. The WRXs were also revised to have that more aggressive, wider body, and they were still plenty fun to have. I mean, who doesn't like them? Who don't like them? 2008 was also the first year that Subaru introduced VDC. If you don't know what VDC is, it's Vehicle Dynamic Control. If you have an STI, if you've driven an STI, if you've been an STI, you've seen that little knob on the in between the two seats, and it says like Sport, Sport Sharp, and Intelligent. Now that button, I hate to break it to you, really doesn't do anything but change the throttle percentage as you're pushing down on the gas. It doesn't actually change any of the throttle mapping in the car, which is a big letdown. So if you go from Sport to Sport Sharp, essentially when you're 50% throttle in Sport, you'd be 80% throttle in Sport Sharp. So thanks for lying to us, Subaru. Really appreciate that one. And then the last two parts I want to touch on with the GR chassis is in 2008 they also moved the STI from a 17-inch wheel up to an 18-inch wheel, so you got the BBS and the Yankee wheels with those models versus just the BBS STI wheels on the GD chassis. And then with that you also have the IHI VF48 on the STIs. Ooh, decent turbo, not a bad bump of power, but that's gonna wrap up the GR chassis. Remember, these are just brief overviews. If you guys have any questions, you can drop them down below, but we're gonna jump right into the VA chassis now. So now with the VA chassis, remember this is gonna be your 2015 and plus WRXs and STIs. Now this was an interesting time for Subaru. Subaru was like, no more EJ series in that WRX. Let's pull it right out. Let's put an FA20 in there. Ooh, so the FA20 is a DIT. It's a direct injection turbo engine. It is no longer port injection like the STI is or any of the previous cars are. So instead of injecting the fuel above the valves, it is now injecting it straight into the cylinder, which, hey, it's more efficient, but I prefer personally port injection over direct injection just because I don't like the carbon buildup that you end up getting on the valves. It's extra maintenance. You got to get the valves walnut blasted, and it's just not something I want to deal with. I had a couple 16 WRXs a couple years ago, and they were fun cars, but just not the car for me. But also in 2015, Subaru decided that they would offer a CVT transmission with the WRXs, which was a first for them. So it's the continuously variable transmission. It's fancy, it continues to do things. They're not the best out there, but they get the job done. They're all right. The next interesting point with the VA chassis, it is a stiffer chassis than the GR and the GD were. Now with that, Subaru put a lot of time, money, and R&D into the structural support of the car itself, and it is honestly a pretty stiff chassis, although I have a lot of chassis bracing done, suspension modifications done to get it even stiffer. If you took this car versus a stock GD, just blump, 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 and you put them against each other, the VA will be slightly stiffer. I don't know the actual percentages, but I'm sure somewhere on Nasio, I got an STI or any one of those other forums actually has those measurements. Now you could take this as a little bit of personal preference, but I have gotten a little bit of a consensus from other people that the VA chassis is a little more adult. Now I hate saying that term adult when it comes to these cars because as you can see mine, it is very childish looking, but I don't give a damn. I love it. I love the big wing and the wheels and the no gaps or whatever, but whatevs. Anyways, it does come with a lot more amenities than the other models do. You've got that nice touchscreen display in there. You get a backup camera, blind spot detection, heated seats, navigation, all that if that's something that you're looking for, something to keep in mind. But they did make those changes in 2016 to have some of those better amenities in there. The 2015 models did come with a really weird looking head unit. So if you are looking to get a VA chassis, I would suggest 2016 and up on that one. But it is a brilliant chassis in my opinion. Now for the question that we're all here for. What is the best generation STI? Well, my friends, that's strictly up for you to decide because we all have our own personal preferences. We all want something different out of all of our cars. But for me, I think that the two top generational years for the STI and the WRX is going to be 2005 and 2007. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the GD models. It is more of a raw feeling with the car, and I've always wanted a blob eye. I've had every facelift model of the cars except for a 2004 or 2005 STI, and I really want one because it's got the massive hood scoop. It's my favorite looking. They're just so hard to find. Like I said, I would not buy an 04 strictly based off the bolt pattern, but that's my personal preference. There's nothing wrong with 5x100. I just like 5x114 better. But the main point of this video is to just get across the generational differences for those of you who are looking at either just wanting to know more about these cars, someone who is going out and buying one and you don't know the major differences between the years, but it's important to do your deep research when it comes to these cars. Now for me, I know a lot about them, so if you guys have anything else that you feel is important that I missed, please feel free to drop it in the comments for everyone else to sift through, just because this is some really good information to have. Now with that, we're gonna wrap up this video. We are going to close it out, and now like I was saying, that is going to wrap it up, you guys. There is no best generational year for this. It's all gonna be based off of your personal preference out of what you ideally want out of the cars. If you want hatchbacks, if you want an older looking one that's more raw, if you want one with all the amenities, I just laid it all out in front of you, so go ahead, take your pick when it comes to buying one. But anyways, thanks for all the time you guys spend here on the channel, and you know I greatly appreciate it. I've got 2 installs I'm doing this weekend. I am doing the Get a Dom Tune Cylinder 4 cooling mod one. That is going to be Not one I'm looking forward to doing, but hey, we need to get it done, and I'm also going to end up doing that parent oil cooler, but just because we are going to be swapping over to that Motul 8100X clean oil in the car to run that through Blackstone Labs next. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead, turn that little thumbs up blue. Ooh. Ooh. And if you guys are not already subscribed to the channel, you guys can go ahead and do that down here by this wheel today. Right down there. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace out, homies. Woo!